Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purpose Tune podcast. My name is Kong Shang. I am the host of the show. The goal of this show is really to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge, inspire you to act, and get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. Now, today's guest is Angela Chen. She is the Chief Human Resources Officer for the Chronicle of Philanthropy, a preeminent media source for the nonprofit sector. In addition to having served on the Alumni Board of Directors for Cornell University, she is a member of CNBC's Workforce Executive Council, a body of CHROs, Chief Human Resources Officers, for those who don't know the acronym, dedicated to advancing the practice of HR. She's also a strategic board advisor for several early stage startups supporting the future of work and serves as an advocate for the Asian American Pacific Islander community for several nonprofits. Angela, welcome to my podcast. Let's check in. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate you dedicating part of your day to have a conversation about just your work, how you got into HR. Thank you so much for just sharing a bit about your bio that I've read. So tell us more. How did you get involved in the world of human resources, and what are you seeing are some of the trends that are out there at the moment?
So I have to credit my dad. When you're 17 or 18 applying to colleges, you don't know what you want to do with your life. And my father knew what I was good at school, and he knew what I was not good at school. Science and math were definitely not my strong suits. And so he found this program at Cornell, the Industrial and Labor Relations School. And at the time, most people would either go on to law school, go work for organized labor, or enter human resources. And
Mm,
so my curriculum started to skew towards HR. And after I had my first internship, I was hooked. I had found my calling, and it's been more than 3 decades in this
wow.
practice. And I enjoy the work very much.
That's 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 beautiful. To those that haven't reached their calling, or they may
Mm.
not know as early as you did what their calling is, what are some of the advice that you would give them in terms of, chasing after their calling, or, finding out what they may be interested in?
It's a super interesting time. So I actually my daughter was asking herself the same question. She's now out of college,
Mm,
and I actually suggest that you put into ChatGPT. These are the things I like to do. These are the things that I don't like to do. What are some jobs that I might want to explore? And it actually came up with some pretty good suggestions for her. So if you're really stuck and don't have an idea where to start there because it can help you brainstorm. And of course, the answer may not be perfect, but at least it's someplace just to get you going. But otherwise, it's talking to people, understanding how they fell into what they fell into, what did they learn, what don't they like, and
mm,
finding your way. I think even now, 30 years into my professional journey, I'm still refining what it is that gets me out of bed every day, right? I mean, it's
mm.
different now than it was 10 years ago, which is different than when it was 10 years before that. So I don't think most people stop searching. I mean, I just got lucky that I love human resources, but even that has taken, turns along the way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that one in terms of the development of the journey, right? It's
Mm.
y- not everything is black and white, and we're always growing and evolving. So we have to be flexible and open to change. And when we operate from that type of mindset, what that really does is allow us to experience more, right? So that we can figure whether it's this path may be better than the path I'm on. For example, I never envisioned myself as a podcaster. I just kind of started because I had too much creativity in my hands during COVID, and one thing led to another, and now I have the show that have listeners all over the world that love it, and I get to do it for fun, and it's great to connect with people like yourself that are doing inspiring and impactful work, changing people's lives. And so you're right on that one in terms of just, being open, and I'm also, it was also very, I find you're one of the very few HR leaders, professionals that have mentioned about AI and ChatGPT. I feel like with my conversations with HR executives, what I find is that there's been a struggle with embracing technology as it advances. And so, what's your take on the future of work or technology, how it's impacting the world, or just businesses, I should say, in general? And what are you seeing from your HR perspective?
I mean, I think that certainly in as soon as in 5 years' time, we will look back on this and wonder why some of us didn't jump on board more quickly, right? It's as simple as everybody uses a word processor. Whether it's Google Sheets or Microsoft, whatever it is, you can't imagine going through your workday without it. I
Hmm.
mean, we were thrust into the world of virtual work because we had to, but
Hmm.
it demonstrated how resilient we could be, right? In the span of 3 days, everything was shut down. We were working from home. We suddenly had this Zoom account, and
Hmm.
we learned how to have meetings. Then we learned how to share documents. Then we learned how to use collaborative technology so that we can work on the same document from opposite ends of the country. So, I think um, it's going to happen to us, and I'd much rather have it happen with me than having it forced on me.
Right.
That's how I
Yeah.
think about AI.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What's your definition of future of work, and where do you see us going in the next 5, 10 years?
Well, I mean, the future of work, by its very definition, means it's something that's constantly, it's always tomorrow, right? So we should have been talking about the future of work 15 years ago, but it hasn't been quite as coined as it is now, right? And I think that a lot of that stemmed from the pandemic because it fundamentally changed how we think about how people go to work, right? Because it's not Monday through Friday, hop in your car, take a commute, and then maybe work a little bit on the weekends. No, it's 24/7. It feels like we're just tethered to our laptop or our phone. We can't seem to get away from it. So
Hmm.
for me, future work is more about how does our mind meet the moment right now? And how do we find work-life balance? How do we find purposeful work? How do we become credible leaders that people want to follow? Because the workforce has gotten much more vocal around wanting workplace flexibility, wanting to decide how they spend their day, and choosing who they want to work for. So
Hmm.
for me, I think that's been the greatest shift in terms of how we talk about the future of work.
Yeah, those are very complex topics. Just the demands from employees, but also culture building, how we have to create more of an inclusive culture for people to really have a sense of respect and belonging that would hopefully help employers retain their talent. What's the Speaking of company building, what's the current state of DEI from a perspective of an HR executive? There's, of course, a conversation about that's different in the political realm, but what are we seeing in the business realm when it comes to DEI?
So just as much as we see the headlines of such and such company backing off, we see many other companies who are publicly, investing even more, right? Standing firm and saying, no, this is good for business. It's good for our consumers. It's also the right thing to do.
Mhm.
So we are seeing an increasing polarization on that issue as we see for almost everything else that we can talk about today. There
Mhm.
isn't anybody who's sort of undecided. I think even the people who are afraid of any blowback, whether that's regulatory or economic or brand positioning, there are just as many people who are quietly continuing to do the work. I've
Mhm.
talked to many colleagues who are changing their titles, right? So it's not called out DEI, but the work is absolutely and fundamentally the same thing. So if we
Mhm.
have to change the vernacular because those are the kinds of games we have to play to do the right work,
Mhm.
I think we can do that without that being soul sucking and selling our souls to the devil, right? Like, okay, so we can't call it DEI, but I'm still doing the same thing. I'm okay with that
Right.
because I'm also a realist, right? I don't need to needlessly put my organization in harm's way.
Mhm.
But so long as I have their moral support to continue to do the good work of inclusion building, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm seeing too out in the business sector as well, is people changing the terminology, saying different things, but the work still continues. And
Mhm.
you mentioned doing the right work, and DEI is really about doing what's right. And that's building a culture of respect where people feel seen, where they feel like they're being taken care of, right? And so those are just some of the components, obviously, but important for individuals, employees as they work for an employer. So going back to calling, what's your definition of purpose, and how do you encourage people to tap into it?
Wow. That's a big existential question for a Friday morning, Fong. How do I define purpose? So I'll take a quick tangent, which is I've been reading and I happen to have the opportunity to hear Dr. Arthur Brooks do a lot of speaking. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, and he's basically the professor of happiness. He
Mhm,
teaches MBA students what is purpose, what is meaning, um, what is happiness, and how do you find it? And
mhm,
most recently, I heard him speak, and he asked two questions, which is basically, sort of what do you live for and what would you die for? And those aren't supposed to be easy questions, but
mhm,
the more that you have to live for, and the more that you have that you're willing to die for, the more meaning you have in your life. And
mhm,
so most people will start with, I live for my family and I would die for my family.
mhm,
That's wonderful because I believe the family is paramount. Like, loneliness is an epidemic, and so having a group that emotionally feeds you is important. But
mhm,
think beyond that. What else? What else can help you derive happiness? And so for me, it's a lot of the advocacy work that I do.
mhm,
So speaking up for the American Pacific Islander community is important to me. The work I do at work, making sure that the culture is healthy, that our leaders are role modeling the right kinds of behaviors. That's work that I live. I don't know that I would lay my life down on the line for my job, but I would have much less meaning in my life if I spent time in an organization whose values did not align with my own. So
mhm.
those are two questions that I would have your audience ponder for themselves. What do you live for and what would you die for? And full credit to Dr. Arthur Brooks.
Yeah, I'm semi familiar with his work because I follow Oprah and he's been on the Oprah show.
Yes, they wrote a book together.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually how I found out about him. And that's great. I love that. I think that in academia, we forget to teach just the basic foundations of building a life. We focus so much on the subject matter, whether it's geography or mathematics, but life is more than just that, right? And
It should be, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And I feel like in life, we have, our finances that we have to worry about, obviously, our family, our friends, our fitness, our health, right? But also, are we having fun? And that's more of a holistic approach to life than just, certain formulas that you have to learn, you know, because your professor taught it and this is how you're supposed to think. I think one of the things
Right.
I'm not trying to bash higher education because I actually have a master's. But I think one thing that was missing for me was just really, um, just like I wish there was a course about life, basically. A course to what author books had, Brooks had to offer. Back in when I was a graduate student or undergraduate student. And so I think now we have the alternative education, online education, where people are creating academies so that
Mm.
other folks can, if not pursue the traditional route of education, can pursue this particular route. And there's just so much to learn about just life in general that I think higher education misses. And I think one thing though that higher education did teach me was just to think critically. So that I'm grateful for. So when it comes to my audience are people that are millennials, maybe the generation younger than that, and they have a full-time job. They have hobbies outside of work and have friends that they hang out with, but that's about it. They don't have energy or time to discuss about what what they would die for, or maybe
Mm.
it's just not. they're just not in a mindset to think about that because maybe it's too big of a topic for them, right? Like they would rather just focus on I would say that the things that give them a dopamine, quick a dopamine, right? So how would you what would your advice be to that type of audience where their schedules is full with work and social activities and they just don't have time?
Well, I mean, I think the advice, like many other things that are often good for us, is you just have to make space for it, right? Whether it's working out or taking time to create a healthier meal, because it that takes more time than just eating something out of a can,
Hmm.
or buying fast food. I
Hmm.
think we just have to be intentional. I think the myth though is that it takes a lot of time.
Hmm.
So my husband was telling me about a CEO that he knows who every day faithfully meditates, and he
Hmm.
meditates for 2 minutes.
Hmm.
That's all it takes. And so, certainly, even if you're standing in the shower, you
Hmm.
can take 2 minutes to just meditate. And it's just being fully present. It's breathing. It's thinking about nothing else but the feel of the water, the feel of the soap in your hands while you're massaging your head, while you're shampooing your hair.
Hmm.
Even just a small daily ritual, just to take time for yourself to not think about what am I doing next? Who do I have to pick up? Where do I need to be? Who do I need to call? What story am I, what's
Right.
happening next on episode XYZ, right? Like just
Right.
finding quiet and solitude is a daily practice that can be really helpful. And those questions that Dr. Brooks poses to us aren't always supposed to have ready answers. It is even just the process of thinking about it activates something different in our brain. There's actual chemical neurotransmitter activity going on
Hmm.
that, as you say, most of the time just lies dormant. It's inactive. And
Hmm.
so we're letting entire parts of our brain not do any of the things that they're intended to do. And
Hmm.
so when we can light those parts up, that immediately gives us a little bit of a dopamine that you say we're chasing. So even just pondering the big questions in life without finding an answer can be good for us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I I think there are some people out there that think that you have to sit down and just really focus on meditating for like 30 minutes or an hour. And
No, no.
meditation, as you suggested, can work wonders, can really,
Washing your dishes, right?
right.
Again, just even sort of the motion of washing your plates and like you can take the most mundane things that you already do and
Mhm.
turn them into a beautiful moment of reflection. When you're walking your dog, that's when I do most of my real quiet thinking.
Wow. Yeah, that's that's a tool that people need to take away is that you can be in the present moment while you're doing things. And that on itself is considered meditation because
Yeah.
you're present, and you're not thinking about other things in your life that you need to take care of. You're really in the moment. And I think one thing that I know I have to work on is really practice being in the present moment because we're high performers. We like to achieve things and we like to build things. And so we're always thinking about the next step. And what I sometimes need to remind myself is that the time we have is now, it's not the future nor the present, right? What we have is now. Like you're in this moment with me, having this wonderful conversation on a Friday, and we're having a meaningful conversation that's going to make a meaningful impact to the listeners on the show. And so I love that. I think that can really be a resource to increasing happiness, would you think? Yeah, being in the present moment because you're
And
grateful.
it's in those moments that you might find your purpose.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's beautiful. Um, Shifting gear a little bit, we talked a little bit about just um, you know, folks on like just ordinary people just on their phone, tablets 24/7, which led me to think about the topic of burnout. And it's becoming if not already, a big topic in the business world. I'm sure you've probably seen it within your organization or past companies you've worked with. Um, what does burnout look like, and how can we address the issue head on?
Well, sometimes our employees are being really explicit. They're flat out telling us that
Mm,
we're burnt out.
mhm,
So first of all, we have to be listening for that. But
Mm,
then second is really fine-tuning our antennas so that we're picking up the signals that would indicate that someone is suffering from burnout. So if someone used to be a high performer and they're suddenly flagging in their energy, they're not participating as much, they're missing deadlines, they're turning their camera off in meetings, they're saying less. Um, there are lots of ways that people are telegraphing to us that
mm,
they're just not operating, at their optimal levels.
mm,
And managers are often not equipped to deal with those, but
mm,
it often just starts with a very simple question of how are you and meaning that question, not just asking it performatively, but really being interested in the answer.
mm,
Um, and if your manager's not asking that,
mm,
that's also worthy of a conversation.
mm.
That, you know what, before we jump into the to-do list, it's helpful for me if we exchange a little bit of personal catch up before we dive right into work. Whatever it is that you need, you have the right to ask for it because that's how you perform best.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think having a space to talk about some of the challenges that are facing employee is crucial for a manager. I had a in my past careers, I had a really great manager that would really just feel like that made me feel seen. And there was a moment where it was a day I was just really stressed out, and he sensed it and he knew it, and he asked me basically, "Hey, Kong, how are you doing?" And I just responded back and said, "I'm good." Very short response. And he's like, "No, Kong, like really, how are you doing?" And he was very intentional about his question. And so that question led to, a 30-minute conversation dedicated
Oh,
to some of,
amazing.
yeah, just some of the challenges I was going through. And it helped so much. I feel like everyone, doesn't matter which industry you're in, deserves a great manager. And so I'm on a mission to unlock the full potential of people so that they can create better cultures for employees and so that employees can perform at their optimal level, as you say.
Mm.
Um, I know you're also deeply involved in the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Um, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing facing the AAPI community when it comes to I guess business, either from an entrepreneurial standpoint or just simply as an employee?
So, I can speak mostly to my experience here in the United States, although I did live in Europe for a little bit. But in the United States, we continue to battle stereotypes that others perpetuate and stereotypes that we ourselves perpetuate, right? So there's the model minority myth, right, which says that we're all good at math, we all play the violin, and we get straight A's. And that we keep our heads down,
I'm
that we don't
completely
make
opposite of
waves,
that.
right? Yeah, we're quiet. We don't make waves. That we are good team members, but not necessarily good team leaders. That we're not assertive and we're not aggressive. And
Mhm,
so all of those stereotypes continue to follow us. And so we need to continue to get critical mass in the executive ranks of organizations, which is one of the nonprofits that I volunteer for, is how do we continue to elevate and lift us into the senior leadership ranks so that we can start to dismantle
mhm,
all of those myths about us. But
mhm,
then there is a little bit of us where we believe that hard work is all that we need to do. And the
mhm,
fact of the matter is, and I heard someone say this very recently, is that we're typically overqualified
mhm.
because we've had to show more than other people that we were ready for the next role or for that assignment because we had to be overqualified for
Right.
jobs that other people would just naturally get assigned to.
Yeah.
And so it's not a matter of our competence, it's a matter of our confidence and
Mm,
our willingness to say, hey, that was my idea, or hey, I'm ready to be promoted, or you know what, I deserve to be paid more. Those are conversations that don't come naturally to us because we've been taught modesty, we've
right.
been taught that meritocracy works, and that's not always true.
Yeah.
So I think we continue to be met with bias again by ourselves and by others. And it's not helpful that right now there's a bit of systemic discrimination
Mm,
against those particularly of Chinese descent, but then anybody who looks like they're of Chinese descent, right?
yeah.
Dating all the way back to the pandemic, they pin that on the Chinese, and no one really knows what happens, but it just seemed like a convenient excuse that for all Asians living in America that we were somehow responsible. So that's a narrative that I continue to see, and And I try to work with our community to rise up above that and bust that myth.
Yeah. And that myth is also what has been framed as the bamboo ceiling, right?
Feeling, that's right. We can only get so far. Yep.
Right. So I've got so much, uh, I've got so many thoughts about this because I actually wrote my senior thesis in undergrad on the model minority myth. And I have a undergrad in psychology, and so so there's one element of me that says, yes, all of what you just said is true because I myself have experienced it, right? Like I've also faced racism in the workplace, um, and like there was an interview for a job that I was more than qualified for, and in part of that during the interview, I had shared that the question that the hiring manager asked me was, what makes you different from other candidates, and why do you think you're qualified for this position? And I said, something along the lines of, well, I bring diverse experiences to this position based on my ethnic background, the fact that I'm Asian American, first generation of my family go to college. I think that I bring that unique perspective that can really expand, conversations, whether it's in the boardroom or, working, with my peers on a team project. And he told me to tone it down, tone my experience down, meaning that I should not be talking about my background, my race, my ethnicity, and how that made me a better person because of it. And so I had to report him to the HR, and so they had a conversation with him. And then just recently, I connected with a consultant that he's been doing consulting work for the past 30 years. He's pretty good at what he does. I would say he's got some major clients, Fortune 500 companies. And during the intro, it was a get to know you Zoom call. He he said, "Well, Kong, I love your name. I'm surprised you speak good English." And that was a microaggression. And
Sure is.
he even said it. He said, and he laughed and said, that's a microaggression and didn't apologize for it. And so I took that opportunity and said, that is a microaggression, and I'm surprised that you're a consultant. You should know this stuff. To be saying that to another fellow consultant. But I don't think he would be winning big contracts if he had said that in front of his his prospective clients.
You would certainly hope not. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So again, I mean, even in 2025, we're still facing
Oh, for
regression.
sure.
And depending where you are in the world, you will continue to face these challenges. But from a personal development standpoint, how I like to deal with those types of situations is, of course, what they say I can't control, but it's my response to it, right? I can't remember this specific quote who said it, but it was something along the lines of, how they treat you is their karma, how you respond to them is yours, right? So it's
Mm,
more has to do with, I would say, um, spirituality, but energy. I want to say, I don't know if you're into that, but it's like, it's people that treat other people horribly. You probably grew up in an environment that, wasn't conducive to them. Like they probably had it really difficult. And so how they treat people, um, was how they were treated. And
mhm.
there's a lot of healing in the world that needs to be taking place. We see a lot of, um, hatred in the political realm, racism. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people aren't equipped with the right education, but also they were not surrounded by the right people growing up, um, to treat others respectfully. Um, so having said that, I think overall, when it comes to the bamboo ceiling, so one of the things that I teach some of my clients is, forget the bamboo ceiling. Like I know it's there, I've experienced it, and I know it's real. But what I'd like to do is frame it in a way and say, forget that there's a ceiling. If, the world was your oyster, what would you do? Like, if you had the power to be, if you knew you could do anything, what would you accomplish? And that you knew that failing was not an option, nor can you fail. What would you be doing, right? And that has really opened people's perspective, my clients' perspective on what they can achieve. So it's almost like a way to rewire people's
Hmm.
brains to say, you know what,
Yeah.
S- you know, I get it. Like we've been through hard challenges as Asian Americans, as a woman, as LGBT or whatnot. But and those experiences are valid to us being who we are today. And what can we do to become better? Like if there wasn't if a any chance of failing, like what would you be doing? So what's your perspective on that approach?
No, I love that. I mean, it forces you to be a much more expansive thinker, right? Versus starting from a little world, blow the doors off of that and think about, endless opportunities. And then you can be a little bit more practical around, okay, well, that job is in, Milwaukee. I'm not going there, so that's not happening, right?
Yeah.
But if we start with all these constraints, some of which are artificial, then we start out more limited. But if you, I know, I think that's a wonderful outlook to have. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it is to encourage people to think more expansively and assess no limitation. Because I believe we as human beings have unlimited potential. We can tap into, any type of version of who we are
Mm,
and really focus on that and achieve the goals and dreams that we want for ourselves. And I think I don't know how much you know about law of attraction or you're familiar with it, but basically the principle is that if you focus on something, it's going to expand, right? And and so if I were to, focus on the bamboo ceiling, that there's always a bamboo ceiling for me, then it's going to limit my ability to achieve. And when I realized, um, you know, probably 7, 8 years ago, forget the bamboo ceiling. I know it's there, but forget it. Like, what can I just do to be the best version of myself? Like, it opened doors for me, and so that's what I like to teach my clients, and particularly folks in the Asian American communities, because I feel like there's a lot of expectations that
mm.
we need to meet either from our parents or from society, and it's definitely a mindset. And so, um, with that said, there's the bamboo ceiling, there's the you mentioned about being more assertive. What are some of the things now that companies can do to provide Asian American employees or just people in the workforce that are happen to be Asian American? What are some of the things that they could do now to advance their career? We talk about like training, professional training. Should they hire a mentor? Should they get executive sponsor, or should they be involved with the ERG? Like, what's your take on that?
So all yes to the above, right? All of those things. They should find a mentor, sponsor. If your organization has an ERG, you should, see whether or not it's helpful. It's an immediate support network.
Hmm.
But also I think one of the things that people are less willing to consider is to find an organization where that work isn't as hard.
Hmm.
Right. I talk to so many people who are like, well, this is what it's like, and I'm really struggling. I'm like, how long have you been there? How long have you been suffering? Why are you still there?
Hmm.
And it's hard to leave. It's hard to change from something that but the thing that you know is not good for you.
Hmm.
It's like if you eat this food and it gives you cancer, you would stop eating the food,
Right.
right? And so I think, we reach a state of inertia that
Mm.
makes it difficult for us to inspire ourselves to change. But I think if we go through these exercises of thinking about our purpose, what gets us out of bed,
Mm,
um, forgetting about the constraints, we can really start to think differently and understand that we have agency and we always have choice. I can choose to stay in a bad situation, or I can find a path out, perhaps with the help of others. Um, so I think that we underestimate our own power to
mm.
make different choices.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Yes. You mentioned about building competence and confidence and then tying that to, like we sometimes forget that we have the ability to change ourselves. We don't have to be stuck in the same.
No, we don't have to be stuck.
And so one of my clients said to me, well, Kong, but I'm comfortable with being stuck. Like I don't like it, but I know it's familiar. And that's what I know.
That's inertia. Yeah,
Right. And
that's
so
inertia.
I'm like, that's interesting. Well, let's revisit that a little bit, right? Like, why are you feeling stuck and why do you feel where you're at is comfortable, that you think it's safe, right? Because to them, that's all they ever know is that situation that they're in. It's like
And
that,
they're counting on you to be complacent,
right,
right? There's no motivation for them to treat that person any differently because you have implicitly said, this is acceptable to me.
right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so, but we happy to say, to get them out of that rut and into something, a better
Oh, good.
situation. Um, so yeah, so you mentioned about like getting out of bed, and I want to just mention, I wanted to ask you, what lights your soul on fire and gets you out of bed?
I'll talk just about my work. I mean, as much as I love to do the strategery, right?
Mm,
Flying at 30,000 feet and working with the leadership team to influence the shape of the culture and the trajectory of the business and articulate our mission. All that work is very gratifying, but I am equally satisfied when a single employee has a challenge and I'm able to talk with them through it and
mhm,
have them get to a better place than where we started. Just even having impact one person at a time, because for that moment, talking about being present, for that moment,
mhm,
that person is the most important person I'm talking to.
mm,
So it's not enough for an organization to say, well, we routinely promote 20% of our employees, or we on average pay very well, because they only care about how they're paid and how they're treated and how often they get promoted.
mm,
So if I'm able to really truly connect with that person in that one moment and make something better for them, that
mm.
makes my day.
I
Yeah.
love that. And that you're basically aiming for impact. You're making a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's the thing I encourage entrepreneurs. Sometimes I'm invited to speak at these tech events, and they have first-time founders, and they're quite young in the early 20s, and they have a great product service that they want to get to market, and that's all they ever care about is just that, right? Making money, going, which is great. I mean, I think, if they have a product and a brilliant idea, they should share it and let the world know and, make a ton of money. And hopefully they'll use that to um, donate to charitable organizations and to causes they care about. But one of the things that I encourage them is, what's your impact in the world? Like, if this product were to do so well and you made so much money out of it, like what would you be doing? Like what else would you be doing? And it's gotten them to think about, what's their role beyond entrepreneurship. And I don't know if you're also seeing this when you're advising, startup founders in your work. Um, but I feel like the conversation has to begin early on so that we don't want to wait until they're kind of further along the journey and now they're just like, oh, we made a mistake and we forgot what our impact was, what our purpose was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You can lose the thread, right? You can find yourself that you're now 16 Mondays later and you forgot why you were doing it all in the first place.
Exactly. And by reminding them of their why, that really can help them overcome obstacles that they'll be facing in the future, right? And Simon Sinek, who's, he's a
Yes, Simon Sinek. Yeah.
psychologist that talks a lot about organizational purpose and why, speaks
Yes.
about this, that companies that are purpose driven they tend to outperform their competitors, and they also think strategically long term, not short term, right? And so that's kind of like the mindset that I share with first time business owners, founders, is to remind them of their why and what gets them out of bed every morning. And
Mm.
I love that conversation because once they're in this in the conversation, it really they realize that there's more to it than just business, and that
Oh, yeah.
they see themselves beyond entrepreneurship. And I think that's a good thing. I really think that's a
Excellent thing. It's an excellent thing. That's good consulting right there, Con.
thank you. I appreciate that. Um, so speaking of good consulting, what are some of your success habits and how have they served you?
One of my good success habits, I think, has been about building relationships with others and being really intentional about learning from them. I mean,
Mm,
I have the opportunity to meet really fascinating, good humans each week, each day. And when I go to conferences, I make it, my mission to meet new people, because nobody ever wins alone, nobody ever goes it alone, and if they do, it's so lonely, right? And I don't want to be lonely, and I don't want the work to be any harder than it needs to be. And it's going back to what you said. It's fun. It's fun to meet new people like you. And so I think one of my success factors has been making sure that my network is as broad and as deep and as diverse as possible. Because it also has a practical benefit, which is you never know when calling I may be to help you and you might be able to help me. And so
yeah.
it's that mutual support, makes the world go round. And the more insular and the isolated you are, the harder the road is.
Mhm.
So I have found that my success has been paved with lots of good relationships.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm a networker myself, and I believe in the power of networking. I think it can help you open doors, so many doors. And again, let's just say in the realm of um, unlimited possibilities, right? It's who you meet at a networking event can become your business partner, can become your next employer, your co-founder. So it's important to continue to build and cultivate those relationships. They say, your network is your network is your net worth, and to
Mm.
a certain extent that is true. And what would you advise people who may not be so good at networking and they're, let's say, more of an introvert? They feel like meeting people is kind of an energy draining situation for them because networking isn't always for everyone. Um,
Well, there's a difference between being introverted and a hermit. Um, right.
okay.
I mean, my husband is an introvert, but he has one of the largest complex networks of anybody I've ever known. In fact, I've learned so much from him about how he connects the dots and how he connects people. But he's an introvert. So some of it is he has to spend the energy to do that. But oftentimes introverts thrive more on one-on-one. Right. They're not going to be the person who stands out in a meeting and raises their hand and is the first to ask the question. That's more me.
Mm,
But he is more likely to follow up with someone after the fact and say, "Hey, you said something really interesting," or
mhm,
send them a message, or connect with them on LinkedIn, or deal with them in a more intimate way.
mhm.
That's less noisy, that takes up less headspace, but is no less effective.
Right.
So if you are more prone to be introverted and shy and soft-spoken, for example, then take smaller bites of the apple, but take bites of the apple.
Right.
Right. I mean, I was just at a conference with 150 undergraduates, and I challenged each of them with meeting as many alumni as they could. Like, don't just talk amongst yourselves. There are people that are now out of college 10, 15, 40 years,
Mhm.
who are willing to help you. And if you're not walking away with at least 10 new names of alumni who are willing to help you, then you've kind of missed a big opportunity while you're all together at this convention.
Right.
And I was surprised by how many of them were like, oh, yeah, I should do that. Like it had never occurred to them. Right. And so I think that's one of the things that being virtual and not being native to an office environment is a skill to be learned, but there's lots of ways to do it. LinkedIn makes it super easy. And when that just means that when you're in person, you really have to capitalize on those opportunities when you're together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the overall message I'm getting from you is that be intentional about it, right? Like
Mhm.
have intention, like when you go to a networking event, like what's your plan? Uh,
Yeah. Make it a game. I need to get three, right? I need to get five, whatever it is.
yeah, and what's the purpose of that number? Like, are you looking for clients? Are you looking for business partner? Are you looking for whatever the intent is? Just
Yes. Yeah.
so I one of the things that I like to do when I'm about to attend a networking event, either virtually or in person, is connect with people ahead of time on LinkedIn.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
and
Hey,
so
I see we're going to be at the same place. Let's catch up for coffee. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or just say, hey, Angela, I see you're planning to attend the event. I look forward to meeting you. And what that does is that it really decreases stress on their end because usually when people go to an event, they like to have a plus one with them, but they're going
Yeah.
alone, so they may not know people. And so, but now that some stranger reached out to them on LinkedIn, it's like, oh, okay, so it looks like this guy's gonna go, so I'll go because he reached out to me, and
Yeah.
it's so effective for me. And when I do that, people say, "Hey, you're the guy that reached out to me on LinkedIn. Hey, thanks for that. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you're here."
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
makes
And
me
then it's not so weird when you walk up to them for the first time.
Yeah, it's and look, I mean, networking isn't for everyone. So I try to make it as easy as possible for people because I'm a pro at it. And so I want to, we are HR folks, like we are people-centered human beings. So we love connecting with people, but for others that are not in the HR space, they're not as keen into the social element. So
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Kong. I just recently wrote a post on my LinkedIn asking if people were office politicians
Mm,
because a lot of people think that it's icky work,
mm,
right? That it feels greasy, but actually, politics is in and of itself neutral. It's neither inherently bad or inherently good. And
mm,
in fact, when leveraged, it can be very good because it is about how you get others to speak about you when you're not in the room. It is about meeting new people who can help you, who can mentor you. It is about developing those relationships that either emotionally or professionally or in some other dimension can be really beneficial.
mm,
So I'm not sure that it's optional for
mm,
people to engage in politics or networking.
mm,
It's about relationship building. And again, we're social creatures. We thrive on being part of something bigger than we are.
mm.
And certainly, I think that our careers are better off for it.
Yeah. And you're correct. I mean, the great leaders I've worked with in my career, they're very good at conflict resolution. They're very good at navigating hard conversations. They're not afraid to engage. In fact, they encourage it because they understand that that leads to innovation. People having a greater sense of understanding with one another. As long as those conversations, those dialogues are respectful and done in a way that treats the other person, um, you know, um, with respect and the fact that they can hear them out. And so, one of the highly effective habits from Seven Habits is seek to understand before being understood. And that has worked wonders for me throughout my career when I'm in a very difficult situation. Because so much of what we want to do when we're in a hard conversation is really to go all at it with everything, with our frustration, anger, but when we actually take a step back and be in the present moment, right, as we discussed earlier, and pause and just listen and hear them out and try to get their perspective first before sharing mine. It really has, um, you know, made the conversation a lot more productive for me. And so I would highly encourage all my listeners to practice one of that, to practice that habit and see if it works out for you in the way that it has for me. Angela, I know that we've got just a couple more minutes here, and this conversation has been so wonderful, and time has flown just so quickly. But what are some of the things that maybe perhaps you'd like to share with my listeners that we haven't mentioned? As
Well, to role model the behavior, if anybody would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, just let me know that you heard Kong and I riff on his podcast, and I'd be happy to connect.
That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you, folks. This has been such a joy. And folks, if this talk inspires you, definitely reach out to Angela. I would include her contact information on the show notes so that you can reach out to her and just reference that you found her through the Purpose Tune podcast.
That's
Um,
right.
until then, folks, please subscribe, like this podcast episode, and share it widely with your friends and family. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kong.